Hello everybody, this is Manu S and welcome to another Eternal Contenders video series. Since everybody already has been asking me what I am doing with the new promo Kosul Brigade, which I think is arguably probably the best promo of like real promo cards that we received so far, so promo rarity meaning a purple gem. And yeah, the card is really sweet, pretty powerful. I think it's almost potentially a bit too pushed, not sure yet, but the card looks and feels really powerful. So definitely a card worth trying to figure out and find the right deck for. And I think I might have found like the, for now, best shell for the card. I have considered and tried a couple things, and this is what I have liked the best so far and has been performing quite promising. Obviously, due to how new the card is, I don't really have a big sample size to back it up yet or anything. I don't have any tracked stats. I mostly just played on stream or whatever without tracking my stats. I just know that this version won reasonably more, at least, than it lost, and seems like it might be a really good deck. And yeah, so I wanted to share it with you. Big shout out to my Twitch viewer Cookie Monster for turning me onto Magus of the Mist. Like my prior version was in this similar direction, but had a bit of a different approach. And Cookie Monster basically was suggesting like, what about Unstable Form, Magus of the Mist, Kosul Brigade as like a core. And yeah, while I considered Unstable Form before, I didn't really like what it did. Like, Kosul Brigade is good enough without Unstable Form, so you don't really need it for that, and there's not a lot else that it synergizes really well with. It has some nice utility, but all in all, it seemed a bit too gimmicky. I also looked more into Northwind Herald kind of direction, but I quickly discarded that because it seemed like too gimmicky, and there was some tension between, seemed to be some tension between the early game Herald and the 6-drop Brigade kind of not really fitting. Like, Herald kind of pulls you more towards a racy, tempo-y kind of plan, while Brigade pulls you more in a mid-range power play kind of direction, so they didn't feel to fit too well. But I didn't really consider Magus. I kind of didn't really think about the card, and Cookie Monster just randomly threw it out there in chat, half serious, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. Like, going Magus into Kosul Brigade is really taxing on the opposing removal, and they're gonna be hard pressed to deal with all of this. And Magus with Unstable Form is also like really strong and a good way to mitigate the downside of Magus of the Mist, of just like the dragon dying when the Magus dies, so giving the opponent a clean 1-for-1 answer for the 5-drop, which is still not terrible, because if it lives, it's really powerful, and if they answer it, a lot of other 5-drops die to a single removal as well. Think Cerso, for example. So yeah, the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, and then I threw a list together that made sense and started trying it. List was very close to this final list in front of you, and yeah, felt pretty good, so time to share it with you. Alright, let's talk about the cards. First off, let's talk about the units. This deck's basically just a power play, medium-sized mid-range deck, like your average mid-range deck, curving up to 6 usually, like most mid-range decks, and just playing high-quality individual cards to just overpower your opponent, basically. So the units, we have Kothon, just a premium 2-drop, and actually probably this might easily be like the best home for Kothon so far, I think, because this is the exact kind of deck that wants a card like that and utilizes all aspects of the card perfectly. Then we have Whispering Wind. Card is really amazing in that deck. It allows you to cycle situational removal like Permafrost or the Vanquish effects when they have no targets. they have nice synergy. It has nice synergy with the unstable forms, giving you free cards to upgrade, or even just excess power when you flood it. Or say a Spirit Guide in a matchup where 3/3 is not very impactful, and the lifesteal also doesn't really matter. Or, I don't know, Runehammer when the opponent only has units with 5 health or more. There's just a bunch of cards that can be situationally awkward that you can just toss to Whispering Wind to turn into relevant cards, which is great. And if you ever curve Whispering Wind into discard Privilege of rank, then you're quickly going to realize how amazing that is. You usually get a 4-drop or better and 2 power. So you save, I like 2 power cards. So you save 3 power and get a free card. Instead of paying 3 power and getting 2 power cards, we get 2 power cards, a 4+ drop, and don't even have to spend power on it. It's just incredible. And yeah, Privilege of Rank is important to hit 5 and 6 for our top end, and also for providing fuel for Whispering Wind and Kosul Brigade. So the card is amazing. Finally, we have the perfect Privilege of Rank deck, and the card is really, really powerful in this shell. Another way to use it is Torgov, but I get to that when I talk about Torgov. Then we have the 3-drops. Valkyrie Enforcer, pretty much a no-brainer in any green mid-range deck. Solid blocker, solid attacker, and the silence is just a super versatile answer to a lot of problems. I think we have talked plenty about the card by now. And then we have Spirit Guide. I started with Copperhull Bailiff, but I think I like Spirit Guide a bit better. The 3/3 gives it just a little more impact, makes it a bit better at beatdowning control decks, and the lifesteal is more universally good than the -1, -0, especially when, like, if we would be a harsh roll deck, I would like Copperhull Bailiff better because it can pop multiple Aegises at once and buys you time till harsh roll, which is really nice, but in this deck, Spirit Guide seems more appealing. It's also a really nice curve of Kothon into Spirit Guide, giving you 2 lifesteal blockers early against aggro decks. They often can remove one, but the other one then is going to be a really big pain for them. And with the beefy top end giving one of them lifesteal, makes it really, really hard for your opponent to beat you unless they answer everything we have, which is also not that easy. And then we have Torgov, Icecap Trader, pretty sweet card. Another great synergy card with Privilege and a way to cycle away situationally bad cards and excess power. And thanks to Whispering Wind and Torgov itself, the deck frequently reaches the 15-card void size for Torgov to become a 7/8 in like the late mid-game to late game. I had plenty of games where he ended up being a 7/8 before it was over anyway, so that was pretty relevant, making it a really great card that scales well into the game and becomes an even bigger threat later. Then we have the Magus of the Mist that I already mentioned. If the card lives, it's just super busted. 5 power for a 6/6 flyer already would be pretty good, and adding a 3/3 to that is just amazing. Sure, like I said, it dies to a lot of answers, but that's why we have a lot of other units they already need to answer first. Plus, there are some color combinations that can hardly answer them. Like, Elysian only sometimes runs a couple of killer effects to deal with this, and they often will have used them already before on other stuff, like Torgov. And other than that, they have no way of dealing with this. Usually, same goes for Cambrai, and so on. Like, it's mostly vulnerable against fire and shadow decks because of Torch and because of all the shadow removal. But if they don't run either of the colors, they usually have to have killer effects to deal with this, and most of them don't run many anymore. So the card is actually much less fragile than you think or than it seems. Also because our cards beforehand demand answers, like Kothon and Whispering Wind alone already are such torch magnets that the opponent usually just doesn't have a torch left for Magus. And Torgov also is a pretty good removal draw, indirectly protecting Magus the turn after and so on. And last but not least, we have the new promo for Kosul Brigade. The card feels incredibly powerful. The deck is pretty good at generating extra cards, either situationally dead cards or excess power from privilege of rank. So deck is very capable of supporting at least the first Kosul Brigade, sometimes even more. Unstable form also helps a bit. And yeah, dropping 13, 12 in stats for 6 power or split over 2 cards, even if it costs you an extra card, it's just amazing. So you invest 3 cards and get 2 really powerful cards for way undercosted, making it totally worth the extra card invested in. Like, okay, then we have the removal suit for Permafrost. Card is either great or pretty scary, because against Praxis you never know when they draw their Shatterglass Mage to blow you out. Similar against Recano with their Enforcers and Plates. So be careful, be wary of the fact that the card in the right matchups is not reliable and they might break it and surprise kill you. So leave an extra blocker back and stuff like that. Don't die to your own permafrosts, basically. But yeah, it's the most universal and cheapest answer that Hooru has, and allows you to deal with random fatties as much as Oni Ronins, Gators and stuff like that, to not get overrun. Or have like true situationally narrow cards in your deck and in your hand in the wrong matchups. Then we have 3 Vanquish. Vanquish is a bit better in this than Choice because we are kind of proactive. We want to be able to attack with our Torgov, so we want to remove that Titan before it attacks us, so our Torgov can attack and stuff like that. But still, 2 Eilyn's Choice just as additional Vanquishes, because it allows us to run more Vanquishes than normal, because the card is not dead as often as an actual Vanquish, but less helpful when we are on the offense. But also the fact that it stops cards like Harsh Rule is pretty important, and a couple of other game-breaking spells. I wouldn't mind the third one right now. I don't really see how to fit it. I cut the third one for the Force Permafrost just because it's more efficient, and the deck is reasonably good against Harsh Rule anyway, since a lot of units just present a strong enough board that they need to Harsh Rule that without us having to overextend into a Harsh Rule, so Harsh Rule is not that big of a problem. And last but not least, we have Runehammer, another great versatile all-star in Justice. Allows us to deal with multiple small units while protecting it with our beefy units blocking. Also great answer to Aegis units or to opposing relic weapons, or just a threat to pressuring control decks with an empty board. Just a pretty flexible card, and you can even sometimes just attack into a bigger guy with like a Spirit Guide and then finish it off with a hammer and so on, even if the hammer alone couldn't do the job. And if all that fails, you can still just cycle it with Whispering Wind or Torgov. And then last but not least, we have the 3 unstable form. I started with 4. I feel like 3 is probably a good number. There's some nice synergies with Whispering Wind and stuff, but mainly we want it for Magus and to some extent on the Kosul Brigade part of the Kosul Brigade Urska to randomly win the game with some great hit. There are some other nice utilities. It can pop Aegis, it can upgrade premium units into worse units, like upgrading a Titan into most 5-drops is basically a downgrade. Same goes for a lot of Stone Scar premium units like Drake, Impending Doom, Instigator, or especially Champion of Chaos, all that stuff, Mystic Ascendants. All the premium units in Constructed basically most of the time upgrade into something weaker. So keep that in mind. It's also basically a removal spell. You can even like upgrade an endurance unit to permafrost it and so on and so forth. There's just so many things this can do. Upgrading a flyer into a non-flyer, yada yada yada. Just be creative with the card. The card is actually much more versatile and helpful than it seems on the surface. I really don't mind having the card in my deck as long as I have some strong synergies like Magus, because playing the card just for itself is a bit too weak, but if you have strong payoffs like Magus, plus all the utility it brings, makes the card actually pretty good. Then we have 2 Eilyn's Choice, nice way to protect us a bit against burn spells and stuff like that, like this, and Zindel's Gift, while also just being a power source, giving the deck some extra value from its power base. Privilege, also just basically 2 power cards in 1, plus all the sweet synergies. And that's the deck. The power base is just 26 actual power. I'd rather run a 26 power than another power fetcher, because they all cost 1 or 2 power, making the deck run less smooth and clunkier, and the deck wants to be pretty proactive and curve out. And this way we have like 10 turn 2 plays. If I would run a third Eilyn's Favor, there would be situations, too many situations I think, where I have Kothon or Whispering Wind, and then can't play them because I need Favor to hit my third power drop, or I can play them but can't play my 3 drop because I need to play Eilyn's Favor, and that is just not something you want in your deck. Don't get too greedy and cripple your consistency and like the smooth flow of the deck and being able to curve out just because you want another overcasted Face Aegis in deck. Just not worth it. Which is why I rather just added another Primal Sigil. 6 Justice Sigil should be fine for the 4 Privilege, since the deck is only a mid-range deck, not a super late control deck. So you hardly see more than 1 or 2 in a game, and then 6 Justice should be enough to support at least the first 2. Often even more, but not always. I had no problem so far. If I would run into an issue with that more often, I might consider cutting a Primal Sigil or a Diplomatic Seal for 1 Justice Sigil, but I want to avoid that because the deck is fairly primal hungry with Magus and a lot of double blue and wanting blue on turn 2 as well, while Justice has a couple of double cost cards on turn 3 and 4, but also has Privilege to basically provide the second Justice already. So yeah, it is debatable whether you want a 7/7 or an 8/6. I think I like the 8/6 a bit better, just to make sure we can actually play our Magus on 5 and don't end up with like too many Justice because of Privilege. I also almost always use my seals on Primal unless I am basically Justice screwed. Alright, that's it for the deck. List has been doing pretty well, a lot of fun to play, and might be a really strong contender going forward. More testing will tell. As usual, gonna hop into some games with it, show it in action. Let's brigade some bears and crush our opponent. By the way, the deck is called Hooru Pets, as you can see, basically because there's all these guys with their pets. There's Kothon with his owl pet, there's Magus with his illusionary dragon pet, and then we have Kosul Brigade with its Urska bear pet. So that's how I came up with the name, with like the 12 cornerstone like value threads being like a guy and his pet. I think that's like kind of a nice, short, catchy, fitting name. A bit more creative than Hooru Midrange, and also shorter. So hope the name catches on. Time to battle. See you in a moment with the first half of the game. Stay tuned.